We've got some more armchair DSing coming now at Paris-Nice. Well, not so much, to be honest. It was the mountaintop finish up Col de la Cuyole. They had a Côte de Tourette du Château before. That's French for you, Benji. Cat 1, 18 k's, 5%, then flattens off. We're around north of Nice here. Many riders know these roads. The final climb is 16 kilometers at 7.5%, and it is steady. Bang on. Like 7 to 8%, but mostly just bang on 7% the whole time. Decent road surface, quite wide, and we had headwind on the climb as well. And who's in the break? Holsons? Romo?
Yes, those two riders were definitely in the break, and that's about the only two riders I remember from the breakaway. Cavagna was in the break. De La Cruz, that's important actually.
True.
Because those two riders were on 3 minutes in GC, and GC Cavagna, let's be honest about it, it's on. No, it isn't.
Yeah, his climbing, though, does look a lot better.
Yeah, we discussed it. He's going to be a future domestique next year in the Tour de France for Remco. B-Tech version of Asgreen. It's happening. Anyway, that made sure that UAE was pacing. They kept the break on roughly 4 minutes. And as a consequence, looks like the peloton was going to win it. If it's 4 minutes, then the last climb will not be enough. And then UAE wasn't the last team pacing before we entered the climb, because with 40k to go, Ineos started pacing. With Martinez in last wheel there, why?
Was in last wheel.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, I'm gonna confession to everyone. No one repeat this podcast listeners, just for you all. I was up in the mountains, I had it in my headphones. I got really stressed last night over nothing, and I just had to go for a walk. But that's not good that they did that,
vultures?
Benji. No vultures. I've been looking, I go every day 2 hours, and I can't find the vultures at the moment. Now it's still, I think, technically winter, so they might be in Africa and they'll come back later. But I am on the lookout for them, but they're not here. Ineos do this though, when there's a technical run into it, and I don't mind it so much, especially when Jumbo did the same here as well. If you don't have the team to help on the climb and you've got strong rouleurs, well, at least they can keep your guys in good position into the base of the climb. Now that kind of falls down if the GC guys at the back, and it also falls down if you start pacing the base really hard and then stop, and your GC leader didn't want you to do that. But generally speaking, keeping your GC guys in good position into the base of the climb, entering as close as possible, it saves them a few watts. It really does, here or there.
What I found the weirdest part is that they did this so early though. With 40k to go, that means that they're doing it on the rolly climb, which is still before the final climb. That small thing with intermediate sprint on it and so forth. Now, I didn't really see the value in it too much. You're right. Maybe sitting at the front might help them with positioning, but it was too hard to be just that. They were actually spending domestiques, and at a certain point, Martinez was the second rider in the row, with Sivakov sitting a bit further in the group as well. Now, we're looking at 25k to go now, still 10 kilometers before the climb. Jumbo-Visma starts pacing, helping out Ineos. So UAE is now the team that hasn't had to pace for 20 kilometers, still saving riders, even though they were going to get isolated relatively quickly afterwards because they didn't have the best day when it comes to their teammates for Pogacar. Then a crash happens at the back. Skjelmose crashes, abandons.
That
Christoph
sucks.
also included, but it sucks for Skjelmose because he's had a good season, right?
Yeah. Well, and Mads Pedersen, Julian Bernard, who is a very, very good domestique for Trek Segafredo, they invested a lot, not just in Pedersen, who did win a stage here, but keeping Skjelmose in GC. And one of the reasons I really like Pedersen as a rider is he is such a good domestique when he is on for GC guys. And it was just a real shame to see that before the big mountaintop test. I wanted to also see the watts he could do on a long climb. So that sucked after he's been very, very good in a lot of the French tune-up races like Bessèges and Alpes-Maritimes du Var. Josh Tarling also, I believe, crashed earlier, which was a shame. He abandoned. He went to get scans, I think. I was supposed to catch up with him on Monday, actually. So hopefully he's okay. The young Ineos rider who's been very, very impressive so far this season. So I guess that could be the counter, Benji, why Jumbo and Ineos are at the front.
In what sense?
To keep people safe, quote unquote.
Potentially. could potentially be the reason. It felt more like they were trying to get something out of the stage to me personally, but it's also not the only people that didn't. There were a few people that didn't start the stage, by the way. The lead decided to skip the start of the stage because he wanted to focus on the classics, which is smart. Pedersen didn't start, so maybe that's the reason that Skjelm was a crash, because Pedersen couldn't position him. Also, but it was because he had like flu-like things or something.
Oh, really?
Or colds. A cold was, but maybe he just has the cold in advance of MSR on purpose. You never know that. That being said, 15.5 kilometers to go. Shit's about to go down. Goossens drops everybody in the break except Romo, who comes back after that attack. They've got 2 guys up front, but these guys are not going to make it, so let's forget about them. Let's go towards the peloton. And Groupama's doing a bit of pacing at the bottom. I think it's the lead-in towards the climb. I think it's like the first 500 meters where Groupama sets up a bit of a pace, and then Vos takes over. So Vos is taking over from 15k to go, and then it begins, eh? The Vos train is on.
Big Vos pull. And you'll remember David Gaudu is on 6 seconds behind Pogacar, Vingegaard on about 45 seconds. And Vingegaard, before the stage, he spoke about Jumbo-Visma. Their platform of choice is Zwift. They said, did you have an off day yesterday? He's like, nah. Still spun the legs, got on Zwift, and did some intervals as well. Benji, I think, has had a rest day from Zwift racing today. Is that true? Or am I making that up?
Exactly. I decided after 4 days that I don't want to get injured. So I'm like, maybe it's a good idea.
Push through.
The thing is, I like doing stuff for content, and maybe doing X amount of days in a row for content would be great. The X amount of Zwift races in a row. But then I think if I do this now and I like actually like pull a muscle or something as a consequence of doing this, because I'm not prepared for this, then I might not be able to ride Zwift races for a month or 2, which is bad for content and bad for these Zwift reads. So
and bad for you as well.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, you probably did the right thing. Good thing listening to your body. But yeah, if you want to jump on Zwift and get a free 7-day trial, you can go through the link down below, particularly in this variable weather. Benji, I think there's snow over his left. Is that snow over your left shoulder?
No, that is snow. My girlfriend's actually riding on Zwift at the moment. Yeah, this size of snow. Don't take this out of context.
Someone screenshot that, please. I mean, yeah, there's not much snow here anymore. I have to go up pretty high with Toby. But yeah, Zwift is your perfect companion at this time of year. Jumbo-Visma, you know, you got to try. You have to try. The problem is they don't have the team for it here. And the team was really built to take time in the TTT and the crosswinds. And Vos was the best climber they have. And his Vos pull was really, really good. Really, really impressive. The problem is this climb is very steady and there's a headwind. Now, the fact that it's steady is good for Vos because he's maybe, like he's bigger than Vingegaard. He can put big power and steady power, long climb, and he was doing a good job. The problem is he's not putting other riders under pressure.
One of them,
like a Pogacar or even a Gaudu.
Yeah, he did put Danny Martinez under pressure.
That was weird.
He was out with 12k to go, so goodbye Ineos plans except for Sivakov still sitting there. But I will say, however, when Vos became world champion, ITT, I think we had the discussion of what should his future be. And we discussed the possibility of him becoming a mountain domestique for a team of his stature, and he would be good at that on paper, in my personal opinion, on steady climbs. Now, he's also had moments where he's really bad on steady climbs, where he just drops in the first few kilometers, but he seems to be on a good level when it comes to this year, I would say. He's never going to be the last domestique based on the current level, but he can be the 4th last guy, maybe the 3rd last guy, I would say, in a Grand Tour. But he's got his own priorities. He wants to be a GC rider, so I still see him going to X next year. But arguably, this role does fit him, right?
Of course. He's not the Koos, he's not the Kruiswijk either. He is the guy that sets the table. You have a 15, 16 kilometer long climb. You need someone to do about 6.1 watts per kilo.
Kwiat
for the first. Yeah. Kwiatkowski is a good example on Mont Ventoux in 2021. You need someone to set the table and do a long pull of 5, 6, 7 kilometers. Now, they can't pull hard enough. They can drop all the other domestiques, which is exactly what he did. He dropped all the other domestiques, and he also dropped some GC leaders who underperformed, like Martinez. They also bring back the breakaway, like Javier Romo and Gerber Holsens. Javier Romo, actually,
Mate,
I was
told
really
you to
impressed.
forget them. Come on.
No, Javier Romo, Shout out to him. Ex-triathlete, big unit. I was impressed. The problem is, and this is a problem I foresee for Jumbo in the Tour potentially and maybe in the future, is there's no Sepp Kuss here. There's no Richie Porte of 2014 Sky. There's no Rafael Majka of UAE present to finish it off. Now, it's, again, immaterial because Jonas is not as good as Pogacar here. Pogacar, okay, in theory, on the longer climbs, when Jonas is in top shape, yes, I believe he is better than Pogacar. But based on what we saw on Leuze de Garde, Pogacar is just in better shape. So on a 7% climb, and Jonas not in top shape, he's not going to beat Pogacar here anytime. The problem is, what if Jonas was on top shape here, Benji?
Yeah.
And you don't have a Kuss Kruiswijk to unlock it, and then basically Vos keeps pulling, no one's getting dropped, and eventually Jonas just kind of has to attack because Harper attacked.
Exactly, and that's what we discussed after the team time trial. They came here with a team so focused on the team time trial that it might endanger their climbing team because you don't have that last mountain domestique to launch someone. And Attila Valter in Gran Camino would have even been a potentially better option.
Even though he gets dropped, surely.
His longer climbing in Paris wasn't looking that amazing either. So, in Tirreno, my bad, on Sassotetto. Anyway, we're going into this final. We've got Vos still pacing with 6.5-ish kilometers to go, 6 kilometers to go. And
no one else is getting dropped, by the way.
Exactly.
It's
like
visibly slowed.
Exactly. And Vingegaard launches from the wheel of Vos when Vos stops his pull. Pogacar jumps into the wheel, but a Panther crashes by the side of the road on the back of the peloton at the same moment, but nothing to do with each other.
Chris Harper, erasure.
Oh, yeah. Harper attacked and then got back. Oh, wow. It's the second time this week, but I like that he's doing it.
Yeah. Poor guy. No, actually not poor guy. I like it. But yeah, it eventually you see, sorry to cut you off, Benji, but you literally see Latour, you see the other GC riders coming out of single file to move up literally in the wind 4 wide. And you know the pace is really slowed. And there's only one other team with another rider, that's Jayco. So of course Harper's going to attack. Yeah. He does. And then Jonas this is the problem. And this is why the Tour de France, if you want to remember how important Granon was and how that set the plate and the table for the rest of the Tour de France, whether you have to attack or not is so important when the difference is so small, because the draft on a 7% climb is so important. And even though, as I said, Pogacar winning this stage before it even started doesn't matter, but you see here, if you're attacking with Pogacar in your wheel on 7% after it's been paced at 5.8, 5.7, there's nothing you can do.
He counters.
Yeah.
Instantly. He comes out of your wheel and counters you. And Vingegaard maybe wasn't expecting it, but also wasn't necessarily able to respond to it fully because he's instantly on a gap. Pogacar instantly has that gap. Meanwhile, like, I'm going to stay on the wheel of Vingegaard a bit. He looked like he was still good enough, but he stayed on the wheel of Jonas.
He was smart.
We've got this chasing game once again. The chasing game where Pogacar has a bit of a gap and Vingegaard is trying to get back with Gaudu in the wheel. There were some other riders chase in that group for a bit, but they dropped off a few seconds later anyway, so forget about them. And we've got this chasing game where it started getting a bit closer after widening up a bit. So
I was surprised.
That it got back together?
I thought when Pog counted, he was going to take a minute.
Yeah, but maybe Vingegaard didn't instantly respond and kept something, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't because he fully couldn't respond. Maybe it was because I know that I won't be able to respond, so I might as well ride tempo right now and hope that I can crawl it back and then try again.
Like, don't sprint across like he tried to do on Leuze de Garde and blew himself up. Yeah, bring it back slower with 6Ks to go. There's also probably an element of Pogacar knowing, okay, it comes back together, so what? I win the sprint.
Yeah.
So he didn't go over his limit either. But I still was surprised actually it came back together. I thought Pog was going to go away like in Pratitativo and then maybe someone else comes back like a Mader or Yates. Gaudu and Vingegaard eventually come back. I thought Gaudu was going to counter immediately, but he didn't, which surprised me actually.
But clever riding, eh? using Vingegaard to get back to Pogacar.
Yeah, definitely.
And at that point, you're at the front of the race again. We spoke both in the previous mountaintop finish, Loge des Gardes, about the fact that Gaudu had the perfect timing with his move at the end of that stage, or the attack that he did to get ahead so that Pogacar could bridge over to him. He uses Vingegaard cleverly, eats the plate of Vingegaard before he starts eating his own dinner, and then he's at the front in a group of 3. Now, that's where the intrigue starts, because you're like, what's going to happen here? Is one of them going to attack again?
Pog has to pace, is the natural outcome.
Does he though?
Let's talk, I thought he would if he was actually had the bluff called, because, and he said this afterwards, Pogacar attacked and he also didn't want the group to come back. Look at Andalusia, look at all the races Pogacar races. He does not really like attack here, attack there, respond to this, respond to that chaos. When he feels the best, he will just attack and then ride tempo and stay ahead of it. He said in the interview afterwards, I didn't want riders ahead of me.
Yeah.
And so he's 6 seconds ahead of Gaudu on GC. Gaudu has a buffer of 40 seconds on Jonas, and Gaudu did attack, and he put Jonas on a gap. So he knows Jonas doesn't have it. He wasn't bluffing on Loge des Gardes. I've dropped him whenever I've wanted. I've got him on 40 seconds on GC. I'm 6 seconds behind Pog. And the group is coming back behind, which, if you know about Pogacar, he generally doesn't want that coming back. Yates attacking, whatever. And he just starts riding tempo, dropping Jonas with Pogacar in his wheel. You rarely see second riding to keep third dropped when they're much closer to first on GC, especially when Gaudu is not slow. He beat Van Aert in a sprint last year in Criterium du Dauphiné.
I will adapt, however, that I do feel like we skipped over the fact that Gaudu somewhat start-stopped attack in those spacing moments.
A couple of times.
There was a bit of a moment initially where Gaudu did go for a move, Pogacar was in the wheel, Vingegaard on a gap, and then he kept on pacing in the way that you described. For me, it looked like that, where he made a small move and then kept pacing. But that pace, I don't get that in the same way that you are mentioning. There's no value in that for Gaudu to keep on pacing, because he knows if he goes to the finish line with Pogacar in the wheel, he's going to get beaten on the line there if he uses his energy to pace. So, in my opinion, the scenario that Gaudu should use is, if you've got that gap, if Gaudu and Pogacar are ahead and Vingegaard is on a gap, you have to ask yourself, will I risk my second position a tiny bit? Not even that much, a tiny bit, by letting Jonas Vingegaard come back and hope that he counters so that Pogacar has to clone down Jonas Vingegaard, so I can use Pogacar's usage of energy to my benefit? Or is that too far-fetched?
What percentage chance is there that they suppress, Vingegaard counters, and Pogacar allows him to keep a gap and win the stage?
1%.
0%.
I was being generous.
To the point where Pogacar would have to crack and then Gaudu could attack him, or something would have to have a mechanical. There is no chance Pogacar lets Vingegaard go up the road. So Vingegaard being there and you guys suplessing is to your advantage.
Yep.
So to force Pogacar to work. And then, now listen, on Loge des Gardes, Pogacar pulled most of the time. He still beat him in the sprint. It's a shorter climb, though. I'm not saying if Gaudu sits in the wheel, he's going to win the stage, but you're taking your chance of winning the stage. You're taking it from increasing it to 0. You're taking your chance of improving your GC position from a very, very small amount to 0. And the risk is very low because Vingegaard wasn't a threat. And what I really think the reason for this is, Benji, is all this Demar bullshit.
Yeah,
I think he was like, I don't think I can beat Pog, and I do not want the group coming back, shit happening, and me losing second on GC. I'm happy with second to Pog, because second, with me and Pog going clear, me pulling with Pog on the wheel, I look strong. That's a big statement for the tour.
I potentially agree there. And the thing is, there's one thing he needs to be careful of in such a situation, because if they do start suppressing in a situation like that, then there's a chance that Pogacar will attack the group instead of Vingegaard, because then attack might become the best defense for Pogacar, no?
Yep.
But anyway, we're going too much into hypothesis.
But you're in the wheel of him. You have to stay in the wheel of Pog, and Jonas attacks.
Exactly. Anyway, that's a lot of what ifs. what happened in reality? Well, Gaudu kept pacing a tiny bit, but then he started slowing down a bit, right, towards the end?
But this is the thing, you know, riders, they pace like that, and then they die. Actually, I do want to go for the sprint. And then it gets to 700 meters to go. It's like, well, it's too late now. Like, you've been pulling the whole time. And then Vingegaard comes back, sits in the wheels. Vingegaard attacks on the inside. Pogacar jumps around the outside. Gaudu squeezed a little bit. He has to go the left side of Vingegaard. He doesn't get Pogacar's draft. Put on a gap. Pogacar wins the stage easily. 2 seconds ahead of Gaudu. 6 seconds ahead of Vingegaard. Simon Yates, we've kind of glossed over the group behind. We had, as you said, Perry Pancha crashing, which was very, very odd. Yates looked bad, but then came back. And he and Maida and Paulus, the riders that didn't respond initially to the Pogacar move, when he attacked at 6Ks to go and rode to power, they finished very well. Yates on 19, Paulus much better than on Lodgegaard, 24 seconds in 5th. Maida 28 seconds, Bardet 30. Still having voice cracks. Sivakov and Jorgensen on 38 seconds, and Pierre de Latour on 53.
And you're very right in that, because the riders that did respond to that move were Jorgensen, Sivakov, and Bardet.
Yeah.
The 3 riders that were paused by Mader, Paulus, and Yates afterwards. So pacing clearly mattered between those 3 and the other 3. I will, however, go back to the finish for a second. Why was Gaudu, with 200 meters to go, wiping his hands on his legs without on his steer? At 200 meters to go, you know the sprint's going to launch. You know people are going to launch, right? Why are you doing that?
I don't know, Benji. Why has no French rider ever won a World Tour stage race?
They were wiping their hands on their bibs with 200 meters to go. That's the reason.
Pinot actually good in Tirreno. I think he's in the top 10 on GC. That's a very good question, Benji. I don't know. He should be on the wheel of Pogacar. It's so curious when, to me, and listen, someone could tell me why it's not possible, but if you're not in the position in the wheel you want to be on, just stop.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be on Pog's wheel, you don't want to be on the front, literally track stand. Track stand.
And be aware that he can counter directly.
Yeah. But don't just half pace and then Jonas goes the other way and you get completely fucked. Now, he's not winning sprint anyway, but he doesn't lose 2 seconds if he's not wiping his hands and he's in Pog's wheel. He's finished it on the same time in the draft, so he lost 2 seconds because of it. Will that matter tomorrow? Who knows? GC, Pog now 12 seconds ahead. Vingegaard on 58 seconds. He's got about 30 seconds off the podium to Yates, who finished well today, 4th. Maida then another 30 seconds to him on 159. Paulus moves up 3 spots to 220. He's 2 seconds ahead of Bardet. Jorgensen on 232. Sivakov on 308. Pierre de Latour on 317 to round out the top 10. Tomorrow we have the famous Nice stage, very similar. I think it's the same one as last year. Very, very difficult. 118 Ks. We have 3 Category 2 climbs, 2 Category 1s. The first 3 Category 2s are all 6 Ks at about 6%, let's say. There's almost no flat. Then they do the Côte de Pays, which we talked about in the Tirreno podcast. That's where Wout paced really hard with the group of Roglic, Martinez, Yates, and somebody else last year. That has, it's quite steep in a section, if I can see. It has a 9% kilometer in it. That's a hard climb. Then it's a rolling descent, fair bit of road furniture, and tricky if wet around the La Turbie and Aires, all familiar to the riders that live in Monaco and Nice. And then they do the Col d'Aires from the hard side, which has a 12.2% kilometer. They go past some villas on a very narrow road before the descent into Nice, where Simon Yates, he dropped, by the way, Roglic on Col d'Aires last year on that pinch. So it's a brilliant stage, and Pogacar's going to win.
Yep. The end.
So I think the real action will be in the middle of the top 10 in GC, where we have Bardet and Paulus. I really want to see how Paulus goes on a stage like this, and also how Vingegaard and Jumbo-Visma play it. Gaudu is well suited for this stage. Maida less so. This is a stage where Maida might struggle, and I think Jorgensen and Latour will be quite good. So it's still one worth tuning in for, but I expect to see UAE really should have Grosschartner and co locking this down.
I think so as well. Now, the thing with this competition here, Paris-Nice versus Tirreno Adriatico, is that you don't have multiple riders of every single team in the top 10, which means that it's very difficult to go into the stage expecting rolling attacks on certain riders and so forth. So that's something that's a bit unfortunate, I think, for the outcome of this final stage, because tactically there's not a whole lot possible, I think, tomorrow for these teams. Because
Hague in the break.
You've got a medium mountain stage. Hague in the break is a possibility, but you're looking at that top 10. Hague in the break. How close is he when it comes to GC?
He's on 4 minutes.
4 minutes. I would guess so. I would guess Hague in the break, or yeah, that's kind of it. Eh? You can only go with Hague in the break, really, or Hague with an early move to try and get something out of that. Ajdezer is going to try and get in the top 10 with either Paris Peintre or Berthet. If Paris Peintre doesn't crash, he's probably 11th in front of Hague, is my guess. Now,
I think so.
De La Cruz and so forth probably will try and go in the break again. Kobe Horsens again. Vauquelin should go in the breakaway. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see Vauquelin in the break. I think he lost contact somewhere before the climb.
Oh, yeah.
And then had to get back and spend some energy that way. I don't know what happened there, but...
He lost 5 minutes.
That's bad, eh? But let's be honest. I wasn't sure about his long climbing so far anyway.
Ineos are the big losers of today. Because Martinez fell completely out of GC. They were the ones who might have had a Martinez-Sivakov combination. And Martinez last year, he flattered on the descent into Col d'Ez, and he could have won GC or helped Yates win GC.
Will those white poles still be there in the descents? Yeah. The ones that Roglic had to like...
it's a tricky descent into Col d'Ez. Yeah. It's technical. So... I don't think it's going to... I don't see UAE blowing it up the same way tomorrow.
I don't expect tomorrow to be the legendary Nice stage that we all are hoping for.
By playing it down. This is all very deliberate.
Nah, I think it's going to be a pretty shit stage where Pogacar wins.
Probably, yeah. In the sprint.
Are we doing too much?
Well, the thing is, like, he's just on these 15-minute climbs in his home area that he knows like the back of his hand in dry conditions. Like, that's why he wins. He should win the stage tomorrow. Although Grosschartner dropped a little bit earlier than I expected today. So maybe the team won't be as strong, and who knows? I mean, I'd like to see Jorgensen go for a solo. He's also on home roads. I'd really like to see Jorgensen, if there's a bit of cat and mouse from a big group, sort of Aronsman style on Piornal going ahead, and maybe Pogacar's generous, but I very much doubt it because there's no gifts in this life. Ooh, yes, Vauquelin's very good. Is Wellens still here? He didn't abandon?
I saw him today,
He's
I think. Here. Okay, well, then I did see him today. I didn't know which way it was anymore.
Wellens, Trentin, Grosschartner and Novak is a really strong team to control this stage. Yeah. Yeah. Keen to see how it goes. Maybe break wins. Maybe Foss gets in the break. I think Foss in the break could be decent.
Maybe they do what Jumbo did, and we're like, well, let's blow it up anyway, just for fun.
Maybe. But then Pog still wins. So.
Exactly. So yeah, it's fine. Pogacar wins. The end.
All right, that's the preview of Paris-Nice. Tirreno Adriatico should be a sprint. Maybe we had all the fun on Saturday instead. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see the recaps of both of them tomorrow. Ciao.